I have but made a little digression. All I want to know is the state of the moon; for if it is at the full, I shall be saved a world of conjectures, and know at once to what cause to attribute the inconsistencies I have witnessed this morning. In the first place, I heard Lord Orville excuse himself from going out, because he had business of importance to transact at home; yet I have seen him sauntering alone in the garden this half hour. Miss Anville, on the other hand, I invited to walk out with me, and after seeking her everywhere round the house, I find her quietly seated in the drawing-room. And but a few minutes since, Sir Clement Willoughby, with even more than his usual politeness, told me he was come to spend the morning here, when, just now, I met him flying downstairs as if pursued by the Furies; and far from repeating his compliments, or making any excuse, he did not even answer a question I asked him, but rushed past me with the rapidity of a thief from a bailiff. "I protest," said Mrs. Beaumont, "I can't think what he meant. Such rudeness from a man of any family is quite incomprehensible."
"My Lord," cried Lady Louisa to Lord Merton, "do you know he did the same by me? I was just going to ask him what was the matter, but he ran past me so quick, that I declare he quite dazzled my eyes. You can't think, my Lord, how he frightened me. I dare say I look as pale. Don't I look very pale, my Lord?"
"Your ladyship," said Mr. Lovel, "so well becomes the lilies, that the roses might blush to see themselves so excelled." "Pray, Mr. Lovel," said Mrs. Selwyn, "if the roses should blush, how would you find it out?" "Egad," cried Mr. Coverley, "I suppose they must blush, as the saying is, like a blue dog, for they are red already." "Prithee, Jack," said Lord Merton, "don't you pretend to talk about blushes that never knew what they were in your life." "My Lord," said Mrs. Selwyn, "if experience alone can justify mentioning them, what an admirable treatise upon the subject may we not expect from your Lordship?" "Oh, pray, Ma'am," answered he, "stick to Jack Coverley; he's your only man. For my part, I confess I have a mortal aversion to arguments." "Oh, fie, my Lord," cried Mrs. Selwyn, "a senator of the nation, a member of the noblest parliament in the world, and yet neglect the art of oratory!" "Why, faith, my Lord," said Mr. Lovel, "I think in general your house is not much addicted to study. We of the lower house have indubitably most application; and if I did not speak before a superior power," bowing to Lord Merton, "I should presume to add, we have likewise the most able speakers." "Mr. Lovel," said Mrs. Selwyn, "you deserve immortality for that discovery. But for this observation, and the confession of Lord Merton, I protest that I should have supposed that a peer of the realm and an able logician were synonymous terms."
Lord Merton, turning upon his heel, asked Lady Louisa if she would take the air before dinner. "Really," answered she, "I don't know. I'm afraid it's monstrous hot. Besides," putting her hand to her forehead, "I ain't half well. It's quite horrid to have such weak nerves. The least thing in the world discomposes me. I declare that man's oddness has given me such a shock, I don't know when I shall recover from it. But I'm a sad, weak creature. Don't you think I am, my Lord?"
"Oh, by no means," answered he. "Your ladyship is merely delicate, and devil take me if I ever had the least passion for an Amazon." "I have the honour to be quite of your lordship's opinion," said Mr. Lovel, looking maliciously at Mrs. Selwyn, "for I have an insuperable aversion to strength, either of body or mind, in a female." "Faith, and so have I," said Mr. Coverley; "for, egad, I'd as soon see a woman chop wood as hear her chop logic." "And so would every man in his senses," said Lord Merton; "for a woman wants nothing to recommend her but beauty and good nature; in everything else she is either impertinent or unnatural. For my part, deuce take me if I ever wish to hear a word of sense from a woman as long as I live." "It has always been agreed," said Mrs. Selwyn, looking round her with the utmost contempt, "that no man ought to be connected with a woman whose understanding is superior to his own. Now I very much fear that to accommodate all this good company, according to such a rule, would be utterly impracticable, unless we should choose subjects from Swift's Hospital of Idiots."
How many enemies, my dear Sir, does this unbounded severity excite! Lord Merton, however, only whistled, Mr. Coverley sang, and Mr. Lovel, after biting his lips, said, "Upon honour, that lady, if she were not a lady, I should be half tempted to observe that there is something in such severity that is rather, I must say, rather oddish." Just then a servant brought Lady Louisa a note upon a waiter, which is a ceremony always used to her ladyship, and I took the opportunity of this interruption to the conversation to steal out of the room. I went immediately to the parlour, which I found quite empty, for I did not dare walk in the garden after what Mrs. Selwyn had said. In a few minutes a servant announced Mr. Macartney, saying, as he entered the room, that he would acquaint Lord Orville he was there. Mr. Macartney rejoiced much at finding me alone. He told me he had taken the liberty to inquire for Lord Orville by way of pretext for coming to the house. I then very eagerly inquired if he had seen his father. "I have, madam," said he, "and the generous compassion you have shown me made me hasten to acquaint you, that upon reading my unhappy mother's letter, he did not hesitate to acknowledge me." "Good God!" cried I, with no little emotion, "how similar are our circumstances! And did he receive you kindly?" "I could not, madam, expect that he would. The cruel transaction which obliged me to fly to Paris was recent in his memory." "And have you seen the young lady?" "No, madam," said he, mournfully, "I was forbid her sight." "Forbid her sight! And why?" "Partly, perhaps, from prudence, and partly from the remains of a resentment which will not easily subside. I only requested leave to acquaint her with my relationship, and to be allowed to call her my sister, but it was denied me. 'You have no sister,' said Sir John, 'you must forget her existence.' Hard and vain command." You have a sister," cried I, from an impulse of pity which I could not repress, "a sister who is most warmly interested in your welfare, and who only wants opportunity to manifest her friendship and regard." "Gracious Heaven!" cried he, "what does Miss Anville mean?" "Anville," said I, "is not my real name. Sir John Belmont is my father, he is yours, and I am your sister. You see, therefore, the claim we mutually have to each other's regard. We are not merely bound by the ties of friendship, but by those of blood. I feel for you already all the affection of a sister. I felt it indeed before I knew I was one. Why, my dear brother, do you not speak? Do you hesitate to acknowledge me?" "I am so lost in astonishment," cried he, "that I know not if I hear right." "I have, then, found a brother," cried I, holding out my hand, "and he will not own me." "Own you! Oh, madam," cried he, accepting my offered hand, "is it indeed possible you can own me, a poor wretched adventurer, who so lately had no support but from your generosity, whom your benevolence snatched from utter destruction? Can you, oh, madam, can you indeed, and without a blush, condescend to own such an outcast for a brother?" "Oh, forbear, forbear," cried I, "is this language proper for a sister? Are we not reciprocally bound to each other? Will you not suffer me to expect from you all the good offices in your power? But tell me, where is our father at present?" "At the Hot Wells, madam; he arrived there yesterday morning." I would have proceeded with further questions, but the entrance of Lord Orville prevented me. The moment he saw us, he started, and would have retreated; but drawing my hand from Mr. Macartney's, I begged him to come in. For a few minutes we were all silent, and I believe all in equal confusion. Mr. Macartney, however, recollecting himself, said, "I hope your Lordship will forgive the liberty I have taken in making use of your name." Lord Orville rather coldly bowed, but said nothing. Again we were all silent, and then Mr. Macartney took leave. "I fancy," said Lord Orville when he was gone, "I have shortened Mr. Macartney's visit." "No, my Lord, not at all." "I had presumed," said he, with some hesitation, "I should have seen Miss Anville in the garden, but I knew not she was so much better engaged." Before I could answer, a servant came to tell me the chaise was ready, and that Mrs. Selwyn was inquiring for me. "I will wait on her immediately," cried I, and away I was running; but Lord Orville, stopping me, said, with great emotion, "Is it thus, Miss Anville, you leave me?" "My Lord," cried I, "how can I help it? Perhaps soon some better opportunity may offer."
"Good Heaven," cried he,